In this lesson, we are going to add the percentage completion feature so that as our user is going through this course, they'll be able to get that feedback in the UI here on how far they've completed each individual chapter, as well as how far along we've come in the course. So we're already storing everything in the database as far as course progress is concerned, and we're keeping track of it in our Pina state here as well. So I've decided to calculate this percentage in our Pina store as opposed to on the server when we fetch the course progress in this endpoint. You could make the argument to put that calculation instead in this progress endpoint, but to me it feels a bit more like a UI feature, and this chapter is all about Pina after all, and so I wanted to add in a bit of extra logic and functionality here so that we can work with Pina just a little bit more. So to start, we're going to add a computed property called percentage completed. So we'll come to the bottom of our Pina store and we'll add it in. So what we're doing here is we're grabbing the information that we have from the progress object, and we're going to grab the chapters. We're going to, for every single chapter, look at the total as well as the completed lessons. And then we're just going to do a pretty straightforward calculation here to grab the percentage. We're going to use this number so that we can get a fixed number of decimal places. So what this toFixed method does is basically what we're doing is getting the percentage, which will be a number between 0 and 1. We multiply by 100. And then since we do not want any decimal places in our UI, we just want the rounded number, we can call this toFixed method with an argument of 0 to show that we want 0 digits after the decimal place. And so that's a convenient way to clean up those numbers for us. So we get this object, or this array rather, of all of the percentage completions for our chapters. The next step is to do a similar thing, but for the course as a whole. So we're going to return not just the chapters, but also the value for the course. And so we're doing similar logic here, but we're splitting it up a bit. So we're going to grab, for every single chapter, we're just going to add up all of the lessons in the different chapters. Then we're going to go through and add up all of the completed lessons in all of the chapters. And now that we have the total completed lessons for the entire course, as well as the total lessons in the course, we can do the same calculation, get our percentage, format it nicely, and then return it in this object. So the last thing we need to do is to actually return this percentage completed so that we can use it in our component. Now, once that's done, we can come over to our course component here. Because we want to add this information into our navbar here, this navbar lives in our course here, this course component. So first we have to import the Pina store and then access that data from the store. So we'll import use course progress. We're also going to import store to refs because we want to destructure the percentage completed array or object off of the store without losing that reactivity. We're also going to grab the user because we only have this percentage completed information if we have a user that's logged in. So we need to check to see if we do have a user. And if we don't, then we can hide this information. Otherwise, we would have to show 0% or some other sort of thing, and that just kind of shows a wonky UI. So we're going to check first if we actually have a user logged in and if we actually have data to calculate that percentage. And then once we've done that, we can use store to refs and then destructure to get the percentage object. To update our template, we're going to come up here to our H4 where we have the chapter title. And we're going to replace it with some markdown here, or markup actually. We're going to have the title, but then we're going to add in the percentage completed beside the chapter title. You can see here that we're checking to see if we actually have percentage object and we have a user logged in. So if we don't have both of those, it doesn't make sense to show this information. So we're not going to. Now we're grabbing the correct percentage completed number based on the index here. So we need to add that into our v4. And so we can do that by just wrapping this in some brackets here. And similar to a for each loop, we can also get the index that we're currently on. And so that way we're able to index into this array. Now I actually debated whether or not we should, instead of using an index, use the chapter slug and make this chapters array into an object. And it would complicate the implementation just a little bit, but it might make it a bit more reliable and more robust. But I think it's probably fine the way this is right here with the index and using an array. And so I just decided to keep it this way. Now we also want to show the overall course progress. And so we're going to do that at the bottom of the nav here. I'm not sure if that's a great UI choice, but it's the one that I made. And so we're sticking with it. So we'll come down to the bottom of the nav here and we'll copy in this code here. We don't actually need this formatting because we're doing it in the Pinia store itself. And the formatting here got all messed up. There we go. Now it looks like I need to restart our dev server before we'll pick up the changes. And there we go. Now we can see that we've got our course completion percentages beside them, beside the chapter names. And then at the very bottom, we have the overall course completion. And this is fully reactive. And so if we look at, we're in chapter 2. So if we look at this chapter 2 completion, if I toggle this back and forth, we can see that that updates. As well, the overall course completion will update reactively because we're updating in the store. And because we're doing the optimistic UI updating in our Pinia store with the toggle complete method here, because we're updating it first before we even make that API call to the database, this calculation is done instantaneously. And if for whatever reason we hit that very, very small chance that it doesn't actually change in the database, it will automatically roll back. It will revert that for us. So if we do hit this button and our progress updates to show now we're at 75% completed, if that call did not actually go through, it would revert, which would toggle this back on to complete, and then also recalculate this to 100% again. So in this lesson, we took a quick look at how we can add on a bit of extra functionality and calculate the percentage completion of our course with a fairly straightforward computed prop that will go through and calculate the percentage of each chapter as well as the course overall. And because this calculation is done as a computed prop, it's going to be reactive, which means that no matter what happens with our database calls or how we update the progress, it will always stay in sync and will always recompute to be 100% accurate.